So my role, I'm Stewart Alcock. I'm the General Manager for Calke. Actually, from here, we look after the Calke Abbey estate, Staunton Harold Church and Stonywell Cottage, all National Trust sites within the National Forest area, which is fantastic. But specifically, what I'd like to just share with you is some of our local experiences in terms of how we're responding to some of the things that we've been seeing over the last few years. And the really interesting thing, actually, for me, listening to the talks this morning, is how much of what we've been seeing in reality happening on the ground here at Calke directly is reflected by that big picture story of this morning. So the first thing I wanted to just touch on very briefly was about 5-6 years ago, we were seeing various things happening in terms of the symptoms of growth, increasing visitor numbers and what that meant for us in terms of our capacity to cope with that, but also what that meant for meeting the demands, the ever-increasing demands of our visitors in terms of what they wanted to experience from us. So we went through a fairly detailed sort of master planning exercise which set out our stall for the next 10-15 years in terms of how we evolve things specifically here. So, master planning is a well-known sort of approach in terms of the what, where, how. But the interesting part that relates a little bit to this morning is at the very heart of that for us within the National Trust, for us here at Calke as a property team, is what we refer to as spirit of place, in terms of the uniqueness of this place and the emotional connections that we wish to build with our visitors, the experiences that we wish our visitors to have, and the things that they want to take away from us. And it just chimed with me from this morning in terms of, yes, of course, we have this big overarching brand of the National Trust that is a foundation stone to us, but absolutely at the core of how we run our businesses directly on the ground, our spirit of place is so important in terms of the uniqueness of experience. And so for us here at Calke, the portrayal of the decline of the great country house through the eyes of the Harper Crewe family is something that is absolutely in our minds whenever we're looking at future plans. Another element is around the audience. So clearly we have done a lot of work, as you would expect, in terms of identifying who visits us, where they come from. We have about 350,000 visitors a year. Of those, 65% travel to us from within a 25-mile radius. We're very much a local repeat visit audience, which I think is probably very symptomatic of the forest area as a whole. But also within that, 50 or more percent of our visitors visit more than 3 times in a year, which is an important thing to acknowledge. But also in terms of thinking about the outdoor hub, one of the sort of the landmark moments was us realising that 50% of our visitors are not coming to visit a traditional National Trust house and garden experience. They're here to visit Calke Park, the wider outdoors, and do all the things that they can do in that wonderful space out there. So we've been doing a lot of work organisationally and specifically here at the property to develop what we do in terms of catering for our outdoor visitors. You may have heard of 50 Things to Do Before You're 11 3/4 as an outdoor play initiative, which has been incredibly successful. And specifically here at Calke, we've run over the last 3 years, Calke Explore, a pop-up woodland play area experience, which has been hugely popular and actually is the foundation sort of idea around developing the outdoor hub. Just to, you saw some slides earlier this morning about tourism growth within the forest area. We see that. You can see the slide there. We've seen tremendous growth over the last 7-8 years, and particularly over the last 3 years with a 30% increase. Certainly some of that's happening in the tourism economy as a whole, but I am absolutely certain and sure that a proportion of it, an important proportion of it, is about how the forest as a destination is maturing, particularly around that day visit market. So for us, one of the important things has been about how do we gear ourselves up to meet the needs of our visitors, particularly around those wanting an outdoor experience, but also look after our conservation principles and enable us and give us the capacity to grow into the future. So out of our master planning sort of thinking several years back, there were kind of 3 key principles came out of it. One was about that we needed to ensure that spirit of place and protecting Calke and all those conservation significance was at the absolute heart of what we do. The second one was that we needed to do some initial investment in basic infrastructure closer to home so that we could cope with some of the stresses we were having at that point 5 years ago. But the third one, important one, was actually into the future. In order to accommodate growth into the longer term, we needed to disperse visitors more broadly across the estate. We've tended to focus all our efforts here in the heart of the estate, but actually with 2,300 acres, we've got the opportunity to spread activity much more broadly. And to develop a suite of facilities that played to the needs of particularly our outdoor visitors seemed to be a very sensible approach. So the outdoor hub has been born as an idea, and really what this is will hopefully be in a few years' time as we move forward, taking our plans from concept into delivery, is the destination of choice for our outdoor visitors. So if you're coming to Calke Park to enjoy the wonderful walks, the fantastic wildlife and habitats, increasingly cycling, increasingly natural play, then the outdoor hub will be the place that you naturally go to in order to be the place to start your journey. And the National Trust as a whole and ourselves specifically at Calke have been doing quite a bit of work to try and develop facilities for walking and cycling. Specifically, recently we have fallen as part of a National Trust National Cycle Trails programme that has developed a new cycle routes around the estate. So on the map that you're looking at there, the yellow line around the boundary is actually the existing Calke Tramway cycle route that's already in place. And we're about to implement a second stage in the next couple of months that creates the red routes, linking that together as a network of family adventure and family cycle trails at sort of entry level in order to increase access and meet that demand for people wanting to experience the estate in that way. So that's an important step forward in terms of that. And then also we have now developed our sort of master plan proposals for the outdoor hub infrastructure itself out in the wider estate. If as you arrived today, when you came through the admissions point, you dropped down with some woodland on your right. So Pokersley's woodland is the area there that we're looking at developing. And this is a really exciting prospect for us in terms of new access into an area, hidden area of the estate, with a suite of basic facilities in terms of car parking and loos and all those things that you need to sort of as a foundation to an enjoyable day out, but then providing the stepping stone from there to be able to access wonderful walks out onto the wider estate, the start and finish point to get onto the tramway cycle route network, a suite of catering facilities, and then also extending what we've already tried and tested with Calke Explore as a natural play facility to be something more permanent that's there all year round. So as a property team, we're really excited about this as a way of coping with growth and meeting what our visitors want into the future. But also, I think it chimes very much with providing some added infrastructure and added experiences to that sort of National Forest offer. Thank you.